Hello everyone, and as the next step in our making a quilt in the beginning, we created our design, which this one is going to be 9 patch in 9 patch with 1-inch finished squares. It's going to be a 2-color quilt, blue and white. This is Michael Miller Crystal, and I just love this color blue. And then we're going to use, I have it just enough to make it is a cotton and steel white, but it's not pure white. It has like a goldish, very, very fine tint. And I think it looks beautiful with this blue. So I'm going to use that. So we've got to prepare. I've like pressed and starched, but then when I cut these, I will repress and restarch and prepare to sew. So what I want to discuss is all the options for cutting, and there are many, many, many options. And I have my small Martelli mat out, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a Martelli, but this is one I have, and it's 18 by 24, I think. I forget what size it is, but it's much smaller. And the reason I chose it is because the whole mat pretty much fits in my camera view. So we can discuss how to use things and to do different things and with your mat. And the traditional way is we cut based on our lines on our mat. And on this mat, every light blue line is 1 inch and a dark blue line is a 1/2 inch. So we basically have inch, 1/2 inch, inch, 1/2 inch, and it goes left and right and up and down. And we have our angles here for cutting diamonds and other shapes. The Martelli method is to use your mat for your measurement and your ruler, which is they use a solid technique. And the reason that they use this is their philosophy is by looking through the ruler, that causes more mistakes. So you're going to make less mistakes if you can't see and you line it up using a non-see-through ruler, which is, I like it. That's generally the method that I prefer. But there are many other ways, and I'm going to show you some. So this is the 6 by 24 ruler from Martelli. This is an Omnigrid 6 by 24. But actually this one is in centimeters. But you can line up everything with this ruler on a solid mat. And surprisingly, this one is accurate as well. This is a problem that you have. Every Olfa mat and the Martelli mats, and that's pretty much the only ones that I've used, are accurate. Fiskars is not available here, really and truly, but I have some Fiskars products, and I'll show you one in just a minute. But the important thing is you want your measurements to be accurate. And I had a really, really inexpensive, I think I paid €3 for it, and the measurements weren't accurate. And that can make a mess. But then you have your standard here. Now, we talk about the Fiskars, and I had a friend bring this to me from the U.S., and I have never been able to make it work. And I will show you why. It's really, I thought, a cool thing that it has this rotary cutter, and what you do is you line it up and you push down. And for some reason, when I push down, it moves a little, and it just did not work for me at all. So I think it got used once and got put in the corner. And this is another option to cut strips. Let me make sure I have it turned correctly. This is the Creative Grid Stripology ruler. And there's slots in this ruler, and they're every ½ inch. So what you do is you fold your fabric under here and you cut however wide you want. This always slid on me. Now that I have grippy, it may work better, but I got put away because I moved to, I found I don't like doing long strips. A lot of people like strips, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I find that doesn't work best for me. So what I do is I work in smaller strips. So what I generally do is cut squares. This is a 10.5 inch Omnigrid, and this one is actually in inches. And what I do is I just fold my fabric until it fits on this, and then I cut all the way around, and I have a whole stack of squares at one time. This one's 10.5. But then we go back to the Martellis, and for this quilt, I'm going to work in 9.5 squares, which is this, with the anti-slide on the back, which is great, with 3.5 inch between my squares. Here's the pattern. These are 3.5. These will be 9.5 by 3.5. So I just decided I'm going to work in 9.5 inch squares. But each one of these squares is 1 inch finished. So what I need to do is just cut a ton of 1.5 inch strips. And I'm going to use a smaller method called precision piecing from Shirley Scott Tobish. I love that method, and we'll go into that as we move forward. But what I'm going to do is cut out a bunch of 9.5 inch squares, a stack of 3.5 inch, and then what I will do is, this is the ultimate perfection of strip piecing. It is called an AccuQuilt, and this is the 1.5 inch strip die. It's very long, and I could lay width of fabric on here and do full width of fabric, not an issue, but I don't like that. So what I will do is lay my 9.5 on here and cut my 1.5 inch strips perfectly. And that's what I will work with. And then I can do, the AccuQuilt can do 6 layers of fabric. So most fabric is folded in half. So that means you can actually do 3 layers coming off the bolt for easy count. And then you just crank it through, and it does a whole stack of them at one time. I could also cut, if you're hand piecing, then you want squares. You don't want little strips. You actually want the squares. And what you would do is cut the strips, and then you would turn them around and cut them again, and then you would get 1.5 inch squares. And you could hand piece these, or you can, if you're good with your sewing machine, you can precision piece them, each little individual square, and make it kind of look like it was hand pieced. So there are a lot of options to cutting, and none of them are wrong. None of them are best. None of them are perfect. None of them are bad. You have to find the method that works for you. I found I don't like sewing with long strips. I don't sew them straight. That's me. So I work in smaller. I actually don't have an issue. I could cut these in 1.5 inch squares and actually sew every little square together. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it not the easy way, but also not the most long drawn out way. But with all this COVID going on, maybe long drawn out isn't so bad either. So, I mean, it's up to you what you choose to do. But I have learned since my stroke, I love my AccuQuilt. And it's because it makes perfect pieces. And that's their slogan. Perfect cuts make perfect quilts. This is the next step, is how to choose how you're going to cut it. And by that, you have to choose how you want to piece it. Do you want to piece it in individual pieces? Do you want to piece it in long strip piecing? Do you want to piece in smaller strip pieces? How big of a smaller strip? Do you want to do 22 inch, which is half a width of fabric? Do you want to do 10 inches? Do you want to do 6 inches? I have friends that love micro piecing, and they work with like little 6-inch squares all the time, and then cut them down to like 1/2 inch. So we all have what works for us, what works for you, what is best for the project that you're working on, and all that to consider. Not one way is wrong, and not one way is correct. So we go back to what works for you. So I'm going to cut these pieces down in another video, but I wanted to show you your options, and I wanted to discuss why I chose what I chose. And I have all these things. I've tried them. I found that they don't work for me. But man, if they work for you, it's fantastic. This is expensive. This is not quilting on a budget. Period. These are wonderful, but they're not inexpensive. Again, Stripology. Less expensive than the Martelli templates, but still not an inexpensive option. But Omnigrid and Fisker's rulers, very inexpensive. Olfa mats, very inexpensive. If you're in the States, you can get Fisker's, which are even less expensive. The big thing is you want accuracy. And this is the thing. Quilting is all about repetitive accuracy. Always remember that. So take your time and enjoy. So next time we'll talk about ironing. So we will talk to you later. Everyone have a great week. Bye.